Right, so what I thought I'd do is have a go at the engagement scenarios from War in the Pacific. Um, I'm, I didn't have the original version of this, so this is my first time through this. So got that the engagement scenarios rules and thought, right, I'll start with scenario one, and then realised it wasn't the best one to start with. In fact, on Consim World, Jim Dauphinus, sorry Jim if I pronounced that wrong, has suggested starting with engagement scenario number two, which is what I'm going to do here. So it's Savo Island, and this is the one we're going to have a go at now. Now, in this game, I'll go through the forces in a moment, but in this game, in order to win, the Japanese have got to sink the amphib unit that's carrying obviously some troops. It starts off with, well, the special rules, I should say, are that the Japanese have achieved surprise. It's going to be one naval combat cycle, which I'll show what that is in a moment. Only Japanese can try to withdraw. The scenario ends after the naval combat phase 3. It's night time, and it says it occurs in hex 1134. And the main thing about that is that that's a restricted hex for actual the seas. The victory conditions: if the Japanese get 4 or more hits on the Allied amphibious unit, transport unit, they win. If the Allies, the ABDA forces, the American, British, Dutch, Australian forces, manage to sink 2 or more Japanese naval units, and the amphibious unit is not sunk, but it can take hits, they win. Otherwise, it's a draw, and the draw was the historical result. So we'll have a look at the actual forces involved. These out of the way. So what we've got down here are the forces themselves. We have over here the Allied forces. I think they were still called ABDA at this point. We have the New Orleans, a cruiser, heavy cruiser. The Northampton, another heavy cruiser. The Kent, the British heavy cruiser. We have light cruisers. We have the Atlanta with 2 hits. The Perth with 2 hits already from a previous engagement. We have 2 destroyers, the Bagley and the Benson. The Benson's got 4 hits. Now I assume that represents, because I think these counters for destroyers represent 6 vessels, so I think that means there's only 2 of them there, and the amphib unit itself. On the other side, we've got the Japanese. Now this is going to be poorly pronounced, I'm afraid. I'll probably change every time I say it, but the Teiko, which is a heavy cruiser, has got 3 hits on it already. The Furuteko, another heavy cruiser, is undamaged, and the Aoba, which is undamaged, and a light cruiser, the Tenura, and again undamaged. So we only use the blue part of the turn cycle. We're at night time, so it's basically we know there's going to be naval combat, so we're going to start off with naval combat 1, and then we'll do 2 and 3. In naval combat 1, only the Japanese can attack. In naval combat 2, only the Japanese can attack. In naval combat 3, both sides can attack. But the difference is, in this first cycle, we can put up to 4 ships in the actual combat. So what I'm going to do here is, obviously the all the Japanese force, all 4 ships are going to be involved. I'm going to screen the amphib unit in the hopes that we can survive combat. So we take the amphib unit off there, and we've got to have 4 other units in there. So I'm going to leave the 2 heavy cruisers, American heavy cruisers, and I'm actually going to move these off the board as well. I'm going to put the 2 destroyer units in as well. And my reason for doing that, rather than the more heavy units, is that the destroyers have torpedoes. and I'm hoping I can get a lucky hit on the Japanese with my torpedoes. Highly unlikely, but you never know. So we go into combat, and we're going to change the actual counters. We're going to have a look at the back of the counters. So if I just use this one as an example, actually you can see quite clearly from there, it's got a 2, that's the anti-air combat, so we can ignore that. C means if it gets crippled. Now a crippled is 1 less than it can take, so it's got 6 hits in total. If it gets 5 hits, it's crippled, and there's quite a few new rules that come into effect then. The 6 is its hit capacity. The number 2 up there is its activation points cost, which I don't even know what that means at the moment. And if we flip the unit over, you can see on the back it's got a 521 at the bottom, so that's its gunnery range at short, medium and long. And then the other important numbers are these ones with the tiny t. So 4 is its torpedoes at short range, 2 is its torpedoes at long range. That's the bombardment strength above, but again, that's not going to come into this scenario. Now, the only other thing to note is this 3. What that does, it takes off 3 off any of these figures. So instead of being a 5, it's going to be a 2. 5 minus 3 is a 2. So that is going to be important. So what we need to do now is to decide the Japanese are the only ones that can attack because they've got surprise. So we now need to decide how we're going to allocate which ship. And because it doesn't really matter, I don't think, at this stage, what I'm going to do, it's purely down to the Japanese. They're going to use the Teiko is going to attack, basically just going to go along the line. We may find that some more experienced players would do this differently, but I don't know. So what I'm going to do now, the Japanese could all gang up on one ship, or they could have some on one ship and some on the others, but in this case they're going to go 1-on-1. So we're going to start off over here with the Takio. Probably pronounce that differently again. And now we've got to decide, are we going to use our torpedoes? We're going to save our torpedoes at this stage. I'll just move that up a touch. So we're just going to use bombardment strength. So that's a 5 minus 3, so that's a 2. So we roll it. I'm going to roll the dice, then show you the results. So I've got a 0. Now that is important. With a 0, put the combat results back in. There's a chance that it might be a critical hit. So I roll it again. Got a 6. A 6 is 1 additional hit. So we have to remember that we'll put that there. We can pick it up, put a 1 there. That's already happened. So what we do now, we use the 2, which is the 5 gunnery strength at short range, minus the 3. So we're on the 2. We rolled a 0, so we go down to the 0, follow the green line. Green line goes down here until it corresponds with short range naval. So the green line is a 1. So we've got 1 extra hit. Well, we've got 1 hit plus 1 from our critical hit. So scored 2 hits. So we put a number 2 counter next to the New Orleans. And then we go on to the next ship. So the next one is going to fire. Now we'll flip it over. Again, we're not going to use the torpedoes, so it's got a strength of 3 at short range, remember. 7, it's no good, it's going to miss. Basically, if you roll higher than your number, look at this again. So with a 3, if you roll 4 or above, it's on the white line. The white line's always a miss, so you've got to roll less than that number. So it's an easy way to remember. So that's a miss. So the next one along here is going to be another 3. Scored a 2. So we need to check what the 2 is. So 2 and rolled a 2, go down the green line. It's going to be 1. you get to know these pretty quickly. So short range versus naval is a 1. So it's 1 hit. And then finally, we've got this one here. This one is a 1 strength. So if I roll a 0 or a 1, no, missed. Now at this stage, the Allies would get to fire back if they could, but they're not allowed to because of the Japanese surprise. So we go now on to round 2, Naval Combat 2. And once again, the Japanese can decide who they're going to attack. However, before they do that, the Allies have to throw in all the other units. So these, or at least another 4, in this case it's the other units. So these are going to have to come into the combat. And of course, the Japanese, this is what they're after. So they're going to focus on that. And they're allowed to go in any sort of combination they want. I'll move this out a little bit. And this time we are going to use torpedoes. I'm going to use the 2 cruisers to go after the amphib. And I'm going to use the heavy cruiser and the light cruiser to both attack the New Orleans. So I'm going to move these out of the way a little bit. Okay, so we'll start off with this attack up here. This time they are going to use torpedoes. So the torpedo attack in this case is 4 minus 3, so it's on the 1 column. So basically we want a 0 or a 1. So the torpedoes have missed. However, what we also need to do at this point is to put a torpedo marker on to show that it's used 1 of its 2 torpedoes. The Allies don't have 2 sets of torpedoes, they've only got 1. Then we're going to attack with our 5, which is down to a 2, and it gets a 1, which is a hit. So we look on the table again. So on the 2 column at a 1, that's the yellow line, go down here, and it's short range 1. So it gets 1 hit. So take that off, put that on there. And then we're going to use the light cruiser. She's got a strength of 2 for torpedoes. No, missed it. And we'll mark it off before we forget. And then the combat is a 1. Roll a 5, so that's a miss. So now over here we're going to have the attack on the amphib unit. So first of all, these have both got 2 torpedoes. So we'll start off with this one. So it's 2 torpedo attack, that's a miss. And this one, oops, turn it over. This one, that's all. Sorry, no. What we'll do now, we'll do the gunnery combat. So it's 3 onto that. 2, that's good enough. So we go across here. There's the 3 down to a 2. That's the yellow line. It's going to be a 1. Short range versus naval 1. So they've scored a hit on the amphibious unit. Need 4 to win. The next ship fires its torpedoes. A 2. 2 is good enough for the torpedoes. So we check what it is. We've got the 2 up here, rolled a 2, that's the green line, down to the torpedo line, which is this one, which is a 1. So they get another hit. Mark it with the torpedo marker. And finally, she's got the guns, so the guns are firing on a 3 and a 1. Amazing. So 3 where 1 is the green line. Short range is 1. So just had to do a bit of a reset there because I got disturbed. I had to do something else. So we'll carry on with the naval combat number 3. And in this phase, the Allies can actually get to fight back. So we're going to start off with the Japanese, and because they need to sink this ship here, they're going to move the light cruiser over here, and they're going to keep the Takeo, the damaged heavy cruiser, attacking the New Orleans. So we'll see what happens now. So this time they're going to start with their torpedoes. So they've got here, they've got the thru tackle with a 2. So she's going to attack. So a 3, that's not quite good enough, but that gets now flipped over. No torpedoes left. And then she's going to use naval combat of 3 and a 2. That's going to be one more hit. Not even bother going to look that up there. Pretty quickly work out what they are. Then we go on to the next ship along, the Abiel. It's got 2 torpedoes again. 5, that's a miss with the torpedoes. Gunnery combat of 3. Misses. And then we've got the final one, which is the Tenura. 5, and it needed a 2. That's no good. That was its torpedoes. And finally, gunnery combat of 1. 5, that's no good. Over here we have torpedoes, which is 4 minus 3, so he's on 1. No good. And then 5 minus 3, that's a 2. No good again. So now it's the Allies' turn. They actually get to shoot back. So what we're going to do, we're going to move the amphib unit out of the way. And then we're going to try to be able to win for the Allies. They need to sink 2 of the Japanese units. So if we flip these over, we can see that they're combat strengths. Now the 2 DDs here, the 2 destroyers, have each got torpedoes. The Perth, I think, has got torpedoes, but pretty poor ones. And the Kent. So what we're going to do, I'm going to gang up. I'm going to move these 2 out of the way. I'm going to gang up on these 2 Japanese ships. I'm going to send the New Orleans and the Northampton after the Tenuru. I'm going to send all the destroyers with the Kent after the Takeo, and the final 2 units are going to go against the light cruiser in an attempt to cause hits on it. Okay, now this will be the Allies using their torpedoes first. So we'll start with New Orleans. She's not got any torpedoes, so it's 5 minus 3, an 8, no good. The next one on Northampton, this is just a 5, good chance here. A 2 with a 5. So we go along here from the 5 down to a 2, which is the yellow column, yellow row I should say. Follow that along down here, looking for short range. It's 2 hits. 2 hits on the Takeo. Means it's got 5 in total, which means it's now crippled. Sorry, that's the wrong ship. Into the wrong place altogether. Getting overexcited there. So it's 2 hits over here. And then we've got the torpedoes here. Now this has got a 0 and a 4. So it's 0. Oh, sorry, I do apologise. It's not at all. It's 2 bombardment strength minus 2, which is a 0. So there is a 0 column. It's no good. And finally, we've got some torpedoes from Perth, which is torpedoes of 0 minus 2. So that means that she needs to roll a 0 followed by 1 to 4. No good for the torpedoes. No torpedoes left. And gunnery combat 7. No good. And now that just leaves this final attack down here. So we're going to start off with the torpedo attack, which is 5 minus 1. And a 1. 5 minus 1, so 4 with a 1. So 4 and a 1 is the yellow line. I just lost track of it then. Yellow line with the torpedoes, 2 hits. So that gets flipped to a 5. No more torpedoes for the Bagley. Gunnery combat, 5, no good. Torpedoes from the Benson, which is a 4 minus 4, so it's on a 0, no good. 2 minus 4, so again this is a 0 followed by a 1 to 4, no good. And finally the Kent, can the Kent finish it off with a 5, 2, this could be good enough. It will be good enough. So 5 with a 2, that's the yellow line going down here. Short range is another 2 hits. That takes it over its 6. So it's actually sunk the Takeo. So now we work out who's actually won. So the Japanese didn't manage to get 4 hits on the amphibious. The Allies didn't manage to sink 2, they sank 1. So it's actually a draw, which was the historical result anyway.